Hey guys, this is Travis Legleiter, Extension Wheat Scientist at the University of Kentucky. Today what we're looking at is Trial 20-25. This trial is supported by the Kentucky Soybean Board, and we greatly appreciate their support on this trial. What this trial focuses on is balancing our residual herbicides, or looking at different residual herbicide timings and the number of residual herbicides that go down on a soybean system. And this is looking at control of Waterhemp primarily. So within this trial, we are conducting this on Roundup Ready to Extend soybeans. So all of these soybeans, as far as post applications went, they are receiving 22 fluid ounces of XtendiMax plus 32 fluid ounces of Roundup Power Max. But this trial really can be conducted on any soybean system, and actually we have a sister trial to this that's being conducted on Enlist soybeans in Taylor County, Kentucky. So we decided on our soybean system based on what the farmer was planting around us. At this site, the farmer is planting Extend soybeans, and at the site in Taylor County, they were planting Enlist soybeans. So that's how we made our decisions on what we were going to use for our post system, as this trial is really focused on the residuals and not on the post system. Solely really interested in the residuals, and that's what we'll talk about today. This site, we are at the Caldwell County site in Caldwell County, Kentucky, about 5 miles from the UK Rec in Princeton, Kentucky. As far as planting dates and spray dates on this trial was planted on June 12th. On that same day, we did burn down any existing Waterhemp plants with paraquat, and then put down our pre on that same day. Again, that all occurred on June 12th. And then we came back. The first post application, or the post that's indicated on the signs as post emergence, those went down on July 9th, so 4 weeks after the pre. And then you'll notice some of these will say late post, and we'll point that out if it's a early post or late post. Went down on July 16th, and that would have been 5 weeks after the pre-application. So we decided on when to make our post application based on when the pre broke. So we'll kind of point that out as we go through here, which ones broke at 4 weeks and which ones broke at 5 weeks as we go through this. So that's your timing on these. Again, Extend soybeans. Today is August 6th, so we are 3 weeks after that late post application. So 3 weeks after the late post application, 4 weeks after the early post application on this, and that is our timing on this. You'll see these soybeans are pretty far along. We're into the reproductive stage on these, and most of these plots are canopied or very close to canopy at this point in time. Okay, let's go ahead and start looking here. Here's our untreated. You can see we do have a pretty decent Waterhemp population within here. I've seen worse, but still this is not acceptable. A lot of Waterhemp in here, providing a lot of competition, and overall what really is the problem here is the amount of seed production that's just going to come out of this, all this Waterhemp in a very small area of Waterhemp, but still going to produce a lot of seed. And when it comes to Waterhemp and palm or both, that's what we worry about, is the amount of seed production that comes out of them. So there's your untreated. Let's move on here. So the first 3 programs we're going to look at here, they're all going to have Trivents in them. So Trivents, what it's going to give you is it's going to give you flumioxazin or Valor, metribuzin, and chlorimuron or Classic. So within that you have your flumioxazin, which is a group 14, you have your metribuzin, which is a group 5. Okay, so that's going to give you 2 effective sites of action in your pre. Again, you also have Classic in there. The Classic is working for us for a lot of other weeds and brings a lot to the table, but when it comes to Waterhemp, which is what we're focused here, it's not effective against Waterhemp, but we still like to have it in the package as it does help out with a lot of other weeds. So don't want to discount that Classic, as it does bring some value to the overall system. And then with this particular plot, we came back with Warrant. So that's our group 15. So overall within this program, and that's the late post, so that's 5 weeks after the pre went on, but overall in this program, your Trivents has 2 effective sites of action, and then Warrant has 1 effective site of action. So you're getting a group 14 and a group 5 in the Trivents, and a group 15 in the Warrant, getting all of our sites of action on that we possibly can get on as far as residuals go into this plot, and splitting them out, 2 in the pre and 1 in the post. And we'll go ahead and look here, and again did receive XtendiMax and Power Max as well, as all these plots will. And these are really clean plots. I won't go over this entire plot, but I will tell you we have a really hard time finding even small emerged water hemp, and you're going to see why I'm mentioning that here in a little bit. An overall very clean plot, and a plot that's going to at the front is pretty much canopied. At the back, we're a little bit further behind due to some soil nutrient deficiencies, but still going to get the canopy here pretty quick on that with a really quite complete system. 3 effective sites of action in our residual package there. Treatment 2 here, it's the same pre that Triavent's giving you, that metribuzin and Valor or flumioxazin, and then coming back late post again 5 weeks after that pre-application with dual 2 magnum or S-metolachlor. So the same treatment, just using a different group 15 in our post application. Rather than wart, we're using dual 2 magnum or S-metolachlor, and it's the same story. By having a really good residual up front, we bought ourselves some time, got ourselves well into July before we had to make that post application on this, and then that with that post application having the dual on there, giving us more residual, getting our soybeans to canopy on this. So another really good system, something that we would recommend again by using all of these. And of course we use dual, but there's lots of S-metolachlor products that out there that you could use. So that's your choice. That's just what we have on hand is dual. Okay, and a similar system here. Again, Triavent's up front, giving you that Flumi as well as metribuzin, a group 14 and a group 5, and here replacing our group 15 is Residual or pyroxasulfone. So the past 3 plots, basically the only difference is what group 15 goes down post-emergence, so kind of giving you the choice of what group 15 goes down. When we apply these group 15s pre-emergence or at planting, we can see some separation of them, but as far as residuals going down on the in the post application, all of them are working really well for us. So late season control or going down lay-by in our post. In this trial, they're all working really well for us. So 3 really good treatments here where we're getting 3 effective sites of action onto the ground and just splitting them out. 2 of those actions or sites of action are going down pre, and then the 3rd one's coming in post. So these 3 would be what we highly recommend for farmers to do, maximizing those residuals and really relying heavily on the residuals, still having the post application in there of dicamba and glyphosate, but really relying heavily on our residual packages on these. And again, that's what we recommend. Now, and those are the most expensive packages or the more expensive packages. Now, the next couple of treatments, what we're going to do is look at packages where we're coming in really heavy on the front end and then not providing any residual in the post. Okay, so here's Fierce XLT. You're getting flumioxazin or Valor, pyroxasulfone or Residual, and then again Classic. So within this 3 actives within that pre, but only 2 of them are effective, and that's the group 14 and the group 15. Your pyroxasulfone is the group 15 and your flumioxazin as the group 14. And overall, a product, Fierce XLT, that has worked really well for us, a product that a lot of guys work. 2 effective sites of action. We do recommend it if you're looking for something with multiple sites of action. Then again, in your late post that came on 5 weeks after the pre, so not 4 weeks, but rather 5 weeks. We got ourselves 5 weeks of timing here, and then we came back. No residual in that post, though. That's the difference between this and the previous treatments is no residual going down in our post. So overall, very clean plots here. But you do find every once in a while, I'm not saying it's a lot, but every once in a while, you do find a water hemp plant that has emerged, okay? And this is an effect of not having a residual in our post application. So there's not a lot of them, not going to provide any competition for the soybeans for the rest of the season, but what they do have the potential to do is produce seed. And when it comes to water hemp or palmer, seed production is bad. We don't want any seed production from these. So although this looks like a really clean plot, and actually overall is a very good program, and I think you're going to be happy with your soybeans in this later in the season, and that's what we really were going to focus on this trial, is we will come back late in the season and collect water hemp plants, collect seed heads, and see how much seed production we get out of each of these. And that's what we're going to see here. We suspect is some seed production coming out of these, whereas the last couple, nothing coming up in those, but certainly we would expect, even if there is something that comes up, less seed production as far as water hemp in those. Okay. Here we are, a similar program to the last one where we're putting all of our residual up front, nothing in our post. And this is Boundary. Boundary's giving you S-metolachlor or dual and metribuzin, so a group 15 and a group 5, so just a little bit different combination, but still 2 effective sites of action. And then coming back with post with just dicamba and glyphosate, nothing else, no residual lay-by on this one, okay? So as we come into here, again, a really clean plot, and every once in a while you can find a Waterhemp plant, okay? It is hard to find. You can see I kind of struggled to find my spot there. So again, those few Waterhemp plants are not going to provide any competition for these soybeans, but the one thing that they have the potential to provide is Waterhemp seed production, and that's the concern with this, and that's why we're looking at this. We'll come back late in the season and evaluate how much seed production we get out of those. So overall, as a farmer, you're really going to like this treatment as far as how good your soybeans look, but this is one of those where late in the season or as we get closer to harvest, you're going to be surprised to see a few of those Waterhemp plants start to pop up and kind of say to yourself, where did those come from? And that's one of the fallacies of not having the layover residual. Same story here, Broadax XC coming back with Extended Max and Roundup, nothing in the post-emergence application. Broadax XC is going to give you sulfentrazone and dual 2 magnum. So group 14 sulfentrazone is in most of our authority products, and then dual 2 magnum. So getting a group 14 and a group 15 in there, and then coming back with no residual. So again, really good up front because we were getting 2 effective sites of action, but we don't have anything when it comes down to our post-emergence application as far as the residual goes. And again, there's not a lot of them, but there are a few these Waterhemp plants that are starting to come up later in the season because we don't have any residual on the ground within our post-emergence application. And it's the same story as the last 2. Not necessarily going to hurt us on our soybean yield or be competitive, but we do expect to have some seed production out of these plants, and that's what we're really focused on in here, is how much return to the seed bank do we have from our Waterhemp plants, because that's really needs to be our focus when it comes to Waterhemp control, is 0 seed return. So again, those 3 treatments, putting all of our money into our residuals up front, and then just coming back with a simple post application, no residual behind that post. So we'll see what we get back from these as far as seed return, but we suspect to get a little bit more out of those as compared to those first 3 treatments where we applied a pre up front and then came back with a layover residual. All right, we'll go back to the second tier here and look at a little bit of a different approach. And with these, what we're going to do is you have Valor XLT in your pre. So Valor XLT is going to give you flumioxazin plus classic. So you're only getting the group 14, only 1 side of action in there. And then you'll notice in the post that just says post, not late post. So that came in 4 weeks after the pre, not 5 weeks. We had to spray this a little bit earlier than those first treatments because we just didn't have as much power in that residual. And that's what we expect when you're only using 1 effective side of action up front. We expect that, and typically it's going to break earlier, and we're going to have to spray our post a little bit earlier. And then in our post, we do have Residual in there, so we do have a layover residual. So overall, in this one, you have 2 effective sites of action. Just we're splitting them apart between the pre and the post. And if you go back and look, 4 treatments prior to this, we had Fierce XLT, and overall the actives are the same as what we're seeing here between Valor XLT and Zidua, and we try to get those rates as close as possible, so equivalent, but just splitting apart and taking that Zidua out of the pre and sticking it into our post. So that's how we're kind of making this comparison here. The fallacy here is with only having 1 active down pre, we had to come back earlier with our post application a week earlier. But we still do have that residual post, and with having that just a little bit, with only having 1 residual in there, you can see we did have a few plants that were a little bit too big for that post application, not a lot, but overall a really clean plot. We don't have a lot of escapes on here because we do have that Zidua that we held off until our post application. But the fallacy here is we had to come in earlier to make that post application as compared to those others. So that's the trade-off here. Do you want to come back with your post earlier, or do you want to have all of your residuals on early and then come back with your post without residual? On this one, the escapes are simply the plants that were just a little bit too big or broke on us a little bit too early for that post application, and the post application wasn't 100% effective, but overall a very clean plot. But again, the goal on this one is to look at residual feedback, and typically is seed return to the bank, and typically we try to not recommend these programs, as we would like to have more residual on the ground in our pre-emergence than what we get out of that. Okay, so here we have Canopy, and Canopy is going to give you metribuzin and chlorimuron. Okay, so with that, you're getting one effective site of action, that group 5, and then coming back with dual 2 magnum. So if you remember, we had boundary earlier, and with boundary you have metribuzin and dual. So the same combination here, trying to get to the same rates. The difference here is we do have classic in here as well, or in this one as well, but just splitting apart that metribuzin and that dual that we had in our boundary and pulling it apart into our pre and our post. So getting one effective site of action in our pre and one effective site of action in our post. As far as residuals go, again, I'm focused on the residuals on these. So 2 effective sites of action as far as residuals go on this plot. Just split apart between the pre and the post. You'll see at the front of these plots, we do have some nutrient deficiencies on those, so we'll kind of look back here at the back of the plots. Again, you'll notice that was a earlier post application because we only had 1 residual on the ground. We did come back at 4 weeks rather than 5 weeks. Overall, a very clean plot, and the plot that looks really good for us, not having those late season breaks, and we contribute a lot of that to the fact that we do have a residual in our post-emergence application. So if anything, what we're showing you here is that we're getting a lot of power out of that layover residual or that dual 2 magnum. In this case, the last plot, it would have been the Zidua, but simply having that product in the tank in our post-emergence helps us out, helps us get a longer ways down the road. The difference between these plots and the ones we looked in the first tier is by only having 1 effective site of action in our pre, we had to come back earlier for that post application. So again, looking at those trade-offs of timing. Okay, and then one more here, Authority XL, you're getting in that Authority, you're getting your sulfentrazone or your group 14, and then the XL, that's going to indicate that we have classic in there as well. So just trying to keep classic in as many of these as we can. Again, not effective against Waterhemp, but it helps us out with a lot of other things. And then coming back post-emergence with dual 2 magnum. So again, this would be kind of looking at that Broadax XC and pulling it apart and putting your sulfentrazone in the pre and your dual in the post. Okay, again, we do have classic in there as well. That's the difference between that plot and this one. But just taking those 2 effective sites of action, those 2 residuals, and pulling them apart rather than putting them all on pre, we're splitting them apart between the pre and the post. So overall, still getting 2 effective sites of action on the ground, but just applying them separately rather than all in the pre. And it's going to be the same thing here. A really clean plot. You do have a few plants that got by our post application and a few escapes, but overall a really good looking plot. And again, the goal of this trial will be to look at how much we have, how much seed return we have on these plots. So we suspect we'll get a little bit out of this one, but we just don't know how much. So 2 effective sites of action, just spreading them out between the pre and the post. Okay, now the last 3 that we're going to look at here is we're going to look at really simple systems and the cheapest systems. Okay, Valor XLT, we're getting flumioxazin and classic, 1 effective site of action, coming back with XtendiMax and Roundup PowerMax post 4 weeks later, not 5 weeks, but 4 weeks later, and no residual in that post application. Okay, so overall we only have 1 effective site of action in our pre on this system. Okay, so again, for fairness, we'll go back here into where we don't have those nutrient deficiencies, and you can see here this really probably needed a second post application. We would have made that second post application, but our soybeans were already flowering. We're already to R1, and that's a little bit of a fallacy of these Xtend soybeans, is those late post applications sometimes are difficult to do. Not certainly much better than our untreated check, that's for sure, and better to have any residual than no residual. But overall, we are going to get some seed return on this one. We are going to have escapes late in the season on this one. And so that's what you're going to get with these programs, where we go in with a pre that only has one effective site of action and don't lay over anything post-emergence. That's when you see the late season escapes. And if you're on a large scale field, this one's going to look really good from the road. But in a couple of weeks or at the end of the season, you're going to see all those Waterhemp plants popping through, and it's really going to surprise you. And again, not going to be super competitive with the soybeans, but it is going to return some Waterhemp seed to the ground. Okay, here we're looking at canopy early. Again, the canopy is really only giving you metribuzin. There's classic in there as well. And then coming back with XtendiMax and PowerMax. Okay, so again, at the front of this, we do have some nutrient deficiencies. We suspected ALS injury early on, but we found out it's more nutrient deficiency in this field. But again, by just simply having that one residual coming back 4 weeks later and making that post-application without a residual, you can see we have a lot of Waterhemp plants that have broken through and really needed a second post-application, but the soybeans were already flowering. And the other thing is, I did tell you today is August 6th. So we're past that July 31st deadline when we lost several of our dicamba labels here in 2020. So again, overall a good program, but we really needed more residuals than what we put in this package. Metribuzin alone early on just isn't going to pull off what we need here to give us overall good Waterhemp control. Looked really good early in the season, but it's a late season emergence that really kills you on this, okay? And then lastly, here's Authority XL, and with this you're getting sulfentrazone and classic. So again, only one effective site of action as far as a residual goes overall in this program. Nothing going down in the post as far as a residual goes, and it's the same story, guys. Really need a post application, another post application to go down on this field to be fully effective. And the problem is we put ourselves in a situation where we couldn't do that because the soybeans were flowering and we're not allowed to make that application after once we get to R1. So that is the issue that we had with this particular system. But overall, looks like a really clean plot. But come back here in a month and we're going to see a lot of Waterhemp plants poking through here, and that's going to be the problem when we only go with one residual early on, and that's all you have in there for a residual package. Looks really good early on, but late in the season is when we find the disappointment. And then finally, here is your untreated, your last untreated, or the second untreated. Again, all of these treatments look much better than the untreated, so if a farmer is willing to put on any of these treatments, we're pretty happy with them. But overall, we'd much rather have more residuals in the tank. And if we can go with those first three treatments where we're getting 2 residuals up front and a lay-by afterwards, we're happy with that. But the more, the better. And if we can spread those apart, really, we do see a lot of value in putting in a residual in that post application. So if you want to put in a little bit of pre up front and then come back later, we're happy with that. But overall, we'll come back and we'll look at this again later in the season and see what we're seeing for these late season escapes. So again, this is trial 20-25, supported by the Kentucky Soybean Board. We appreciate their support.